The topic of what are the rarest and most expensive video games that exist is always an interesting one. If we go back 5, especially if we go back 10 years in this hobby, just video game collecting in general, what is considered the rarest, the most expensive game? Generally, those are thought of as the same thing. Like, usually the rarest games are considered the most expensive games, even though the most expensive games aren't always the rarest games. We'll talk about that more in a bit, but if you Googled these lists of the rarest games you should look for, everyone pretty much agreed. Stadium events, Nintendno World Championships, Hagane, Aero Fighters, Sculptor's Cut, Panzer Dragoon Saga, Crusader of Senti. Everyone basically agreed that these are the rarest, most expensive games. And what we're looking at on my screen right here is a Ocarina of Time, factory sealed copy, of course, selling for $156,000, which makes it one of the most expensive video game sales ever. One of the most expensive N64 game sales ever. Like, this is, for all intents and purposes, one of the rarest games that exists, right? One of the most expensive N64 games you're ever going to see sell. And over the past 5-ish years here, as sealed video games gained more prominence, WATA games entered into the market, grading became more commonplace, there was a massive shift as to what the most expensive video games are, or what the most expensive video games should be. And that doesn't mean the titles I mentioned earlier, or Flintstones 2, Samson, Stadium events. All of those are still very expensive games, but no longer are they the games that truly command the most money. There was just a massive shift between what people actually care about when we talk about these kind of price ranges. But on the other hand, we do still see some of these classic rare games, the games that have always been considered the most expensive video games, still sell very strong. Nintendno World Championships just went for $96,000, and what I really want to do in this video is talk about this Nintendno World Championship sale and what NWC has been up to in general this year, because it's been kind of crazy, and then go into more detail about this Ocarina of Time, $156,000, what $100,000 means in this hobby in 2023. So say thank you to every single patron who helps support the channel, as well as the YouTube members. I can't do this without you guys. Hit the like button, and let's talk about super expensive video games. So we'll just start with Nintendno World Championships, a game that should be what most consider rarest, most expensive video game. Everyone should be aware of NWC at this point. It's been selling for over $10,000 for like 15 years now. Probably going back to 2010-ish, it was already getting close to 10,000. And by the time 2019 rolled around, like, this is super early. This is pre-COVID. WATA Games had just started doing stuff. We already had an NWC sell publicly open auction $26,400. So NWC has always been like that organic grail that people have always cared about. And just following some of the price history, a year later, the price on it had basically doubled up to $52,000, and another 6 to 12 months after that for a much nicer one, like 8.0 is getting to the nicest copies of NWC that exists. $180,000 was the peak public sale for this game. I'm pretty sure Rally or one of those other fractional share companies also had purchased an NWC, and then they did like the fractionalization of it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, basically during the 2020, 2021 boom, there were all of these investment companies that would just buy expensive stuff, and it didn't matter what they paid for it, right? Because the whole business model is, say they bought this NWC for $200,000, right? Then they would sell 10,000 pieces of the Nintendno World Championship, and we could all be investors in it for $100. So for $100, you would own 1/2000th of this cartridge. So these companies could literally pay any amount they wanted for these items, because they would just make money anyway by selling it as, you know, 10,000 pieces. But I digress. 180,000 either way, whether it went to a company, private, doesn't matter. And we were seeing 1, maybe 2 cartridges come up per year for NWC. Like, it is, for all intents and purposes, pretty rare, but even in that context, you know, we talk about rarest video games that exist, the actual population count on gray NWC is about 90 cartridges. So with that 90 pop count, in the year of 2023, we've already seen 3 of them come up for auction, which is pretty insane. It started in March here with the Nicholas Membersweiler cartridge. This one came from a direct owner of of someone who was in the competition, sold for about $60,000. This was CGC 6.5 over on Comic Connect earlier this year. Then back on Heritage Auctions, a 5.0 went for a little bit more in July, sold for $63,000, and then just happened here in September, 8.0 went for $96,000. 8.0, like I said, peaked out about double as much, $180,000 versus $96,000. Still down almost 50% overall, but relatively speaking, still one of the most expensive games that exists, period. But it is still eclipsed by a lot of different stuff now in 2023. And talking about that magical $100,000 threshold, right? The last time we saw a game sell for $100,000 was actually Duck Hunt. 9.6 A++ first print Duck Hunt sold for $120,000. That was April this year. Crazy, right? Mario Bros. 8.0 hang tab here, $96,000. And the weird thing with rarity, right, when we get into sealed video games versus CIB versus cartridges, sealed games do have this rarity that a lot of people like to not appreciate, not talk about, I don't know. Like, I think we can all agree that a cartridge is different from a CIB. I don't think many people are going to argue that. It's much more rare, much more hard to have a CIB game. And then you just amplify that by 20 to have an actual factory sealed one. But the Duck Hunt matte sticker first production at this time is a WATA Pop 2. Now, there might be a VGA copy, there might be some CGC copies, whatever, right? We could double, triple it. Maybe we have 5, 6 copies that are known to exist at this time, which suddenly, when you start talking 5 or 6 copies of this versus 90 known copies of Nintendno World Championship, suddenly 90 doesn't seem that small. And the same thing happens when we start talking about Mario Bros. With the hang tab. We have 26 currently on the WATA Pop report. Add in some VGA, add in some CGC, maybe it's 50, right? Maybe we just double the number of sealed ones that are known to exist. Again, it's almost half as many known examples as Nintendno World Championships. And with these new people who entered the hobby, with these new collectors, investors, whatever you want to call them, people wanted to get these extremely well-known games, these household titles in the best possible rarest condition they can. Because you can look here, this is the April signature auction I have up, because this is the last time we'd seen something sell for $100,000. Well, I mean, it was until we saw this Ocarina of Time sell for $156,000, but that was the last time we'd seen something crack the legendary $100,000 mark. And even just looking around up here, we have Nintendo Power number 1, 9.8. Again, Nintendo Power in itself is not rare, but the 9.8, a perfect condition copy, is a Pop 1. And when the world of grading enters into collectibles, it generally does change everything. And we could even say that it introduces artificial scarcity, rarity, conditional nuance that otherwise wouldn't exist. Obviously, everyone's paying more for stuff in nice condition, but when we start talking 9.6, 9.8, 9.9, 10s, you enter into a completely different world entirely, and I don't discount that at all. And even talking about this, you can still see Stadium Events is still here. 7.5 cartridge for $19,200. Like, these rare games still are there, commanding massive prices, and if we were to get a factory sealed Stadium Events, yeah, it would sell for a huge sum of money. But demand itself didn't just gravitate towards something like a Stadium Events cartridge because, oh, Stadium Events is a rare game. People have always said it's rare. NES full set collectors really care about it. It's this random sports game that got discontinued. Like, that's what Stadium Events is at its core. But you can see here that high-grade Donkey Kong Country, one of the greatest Super Nintendo games ever made, everyone knows what Donkey Kong Country is, sells factory sealed for more than that. And it's not a guarantee that stuff like this will outcommand stuff like Stadium Events. In a lot of ways, rarity and demand are not static. Like I said, 5 to 10 years ago, things were completely different. Rarity lists look completely different. Supply is found, or even people just stop caring about certain things. When there's a ton of new interest or a ton of new people enter, rules can change for this stuff. Seeing something like Duck Hunt for $120,000, or over here, there's Black Box Soccer Hang Tab, right? 8.5B plus later print copy, right? This isn't even a first print, $66,000. There's absolutely no guarantee that 5 to 10 years from now, people are still going to covet black box hang tab games. Demand in hobbies like this is not static, and what is really popular to collect or popular to pay for, or whatever it is, right? The most expensive games can always be changing. The hardest thing in any kind of hobby is to find the pieces that are going to transcend generations, essentially. Is NWC NWC still going to be a grail game in 10, 20, 30 years? Are people going to still care about the history of this random event that Nintendo threw in 1990? Most video game collectors at this point weren't even around for Nintendo World Championships. I certainly wasn't. It's something I just heard about, like a legend. So far, it's holding up pretty well as a grail in this hobby, and the NWC Gold Edition would be even more expensive right now. But we can also see here over on Golden Auctions, where again, right, we introduced this conditional nuance with grading companies. 10.0 A++, Pop 1, highest grade, Ocarina of Time, best game ever made, right? $156,000. It broke the $100,000 threshold. As far as I know, this is the only public sale for a video game over $100,000 in the past 5 months. And it's frickin' Ocarina of Time. But this goes back to when Mario 64 sold for $1.56 million, the 9.8 A++ copy, which still is only a Pop 3. There's only 3 of them in that condition. But this is what I mean when I say that the demand in the hobby has shifted in a lot of ways towards these most popular, most iconic, the best games possible in the highest possible condition. You go back 10 years, you wouldn't have dreamed of a day where any copy of Ocarina of Time was outselling NWC. Wouldn't exist. People would laugh at you. Wouldn't happen. And again, like I said with the NWC, the question is, will Ocarina of Time sustain relevance as we move forward? People are 100% gambling not only that this will stay the only WATA 10 A++ that exists, like this cannot become a Pop 2, that would already be an issue, but also that Ocarina of Time is going to maintain itself as one of the best video games ever. And even if that does happen, there's no guarantee that that means people are going to want to spend $100,000 on it. But it's just really interesting seeing how the hobby has evolved over the years. It's kind of funny to see that new people entered the hobby and with it, the rules completely changed, where now like, oh man, a high-grade copy of Pokemon, here, Pokemon Yellow, like I was just about to say, a high-grade copy of Pokemon Yellow, factory sealed, 19,800, right? That outsells Stadium event. There's just more people who would rather have mint condition Pokemon games rather than random Stadium events. And that can change. Like I said, Stadium events, people could make YouTube videos, stories, Netflix. You never know what's going to come in the future, right? Just remember that these hobbies aren't static. I guess the biggest takeaway I can give you, if there's going to be an overall message in this, is go after the stuff that you actually really care about rather than just buying what rarity lists tell you to buy. Like if we talk about Nintendo Switch or Wii U, these more modern consoles, the rarity lists that people say right now and the most expensive games right now are going to look completely different in 5 to 10 years. It's extremely likely that those do not stay static. So if there's stuff that you actually care about, go after that stuff first and foremost. Even if it's not the rarest, even if it's not the most expensive, even if it seems like it's common. But let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about rarity? What do you think about demand? How do you choose what to buy when you're collecting? Hit the like button before you go, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.